swing. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable. Don't believe what I just saw.
First down greenback, and they have just clinched the 4A state championship.
Rich Anderson and Pratt High football. The two will be inextricably linked in the annals of history. But so many other terms describe this complex man. Innovator, junior college star, dedicated educator, crazed psychopath. All capture this enigmatic man, the one-time star center who carved his lasting niche, roaming the sidelines for the Greenbacks. This SportsCentury look at Coach Anderson will delve inside the man to show the softer side of this savvy, complicated signal caller. From his genius at working the X's and O's, to his personal obsession with detail, to the oftentimes crazed public demeanor. From his junior college days in San Francisco and a highly publicized showdown with future Heisman Trophy winner O.J. Simpson, his playing days over, Anderson entered into a world of drinking, coaching, and teaching, and usually in that order. After revolutionizing Kansas 4A football, Anderson's team started a run in the early 90s of unparalleled success, a run that was highlighted by 3 perfect regular seasons and 1 run to the state championship. Legacy already in place, he captured an elusive state title in girls track that added yet another chapter to the lore of Rich Anderson.
My grandparents always said that Dad could tackle before he could even walk. For instance, at a 6th grade birthday party, all the kids came over and they wanted to swing at the piñata, play some pin the tail on the donkey. Dad just wanted to perfect the form tackle and run robust out in the front yard.
Born to Don and Lorena Anderson on March 2nd, 1946, young Rich took to football from the start. A natural tactician, he would often experiment with formations and strategies, often lining his youth football teams in full house, robust backfields and angling kickoffs toward the sidelines. He learned the beauty of the belly and developed his own pass, lofted toward the sideline, that when thrown right could not be defended. As the years progressed, his talents never caught up to his strategies, but he was still targeted by the biggest football schools in the country in a fierce recruiting battle.
And it was some tough decisions for him, but ultimately I think the Bay Area living really won out for him. I mean, I just don't think he could part from going up and down those hills in those cable cars.
Shunning the larger schools, Anderson shocked the world when he stayed close to home at San Francisco's Foothills Junior College, where he signed on to play center. Elsewhere in California, a young Orenthal James Simpson was also tearing up the junior college ranks. It was as if the two were on an inevitable collision course. The nation eagerly awaited the anticipated matchup.
Coach Anderson, the way I understand it, I think he got the ball and he carried the ball and he got tons of yards himself. I think he said he outrushed O.J. He said, you know, the person that you're talking about, I'm talking about is O.J. Simpson, and I think I had more yards. And then I said, wait a minute, Coach, you were in the center on the team.
Clearly distraught over being outmatched, Simpson found the motivation to continue on with a Heisman Trophy and one of the finest football careers for any running back. However, he would look back on his troubled life and point to the one day he was humiliated by Rich Anderson. That, he would say, was the downfall of his life. Anderson went to St. Mary of the Plains College in Dodge City, Kansas. In Kansas, he played for his uncle, Matt May. Under May's guidance, Anderson knew his life would lead to a career in coaching, and molded in May's image, Anderson made up his mind what kind of coach he would be.
Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time.
Anderson moved to St. X High School in Junction City. From there, Anderson climbed the ladder to Washington High School in Washington, Kansas. He was finally forced out of the town after asking the school board to implement mandatory weight training in the elementary school. Seeing his innovation with the robust Goodland High School hired Anderson in the mid-1970s. To those around, it was evident that Goodland could only keep the rising star for so long.
I can't tell you how many times that we'd go up to Goodland or Goodland would come back to Colby and it'd be an ass kicking.
Jim Lewis left following the 1979 season, leaving Pratt officials scrambling to find a replacement. Pratt principal Benny France wanted to find a coach who didn't closely resemble Lewis's strict style.
And Jim Lewis he'd had all this tradition. He was the icon. He was the master. And but I'd heard that Coach Lewis was very, very tough on his players, and so Mr. Franz went on a deliberate search to make sure he could find the most gentle, softest person out there.
To coach the Greenbacks, a perennial powerhouse in 4A football, was a dream for Anderson.
I don't think he'd ever really planned on going to Pratt. In fact, from what I remember, I don't think he'd ever really even heard of it.
The decision to hire Anderson was a no-brainer for the Pratt committee. Despite Anderson's utter failure to produce a winner at any other school, they felt confident he could help keep Pratt players in shape before basketball season. To help him build his program, Anderson used high standards when selecting his assistant coaching staff.
I moved here, and one of the things that Coach Anderson told me is, if you're going to coach for me, you're going to have to drink beer.
Slowly, the players of Pratt began to understand the complex offense Anderson was trying to run. Many of the plays became Anderson's trademarks. The most unique Anderson play was the quick kick. While most teams utilize at least 3 plays before punting the ball, Anderson liked to condense offensive possessions to just 2 plays, then launch a surprise punt on 3rd down when no one was expecting it.
I've seen a quick kick once where it was awesome. We quick kicked right off the back of the center's head for like a net 2 yards.
The belly, you know, it's not something you just pick up overnight. It takes 4 to 5 years to perfect.
Everyone loved the 30 series, the automatic. I mean, it's a pass, quarterback drops back, lofts it to the sidelines. I mean, worst case scenario, it gets picked off, run back for touchdown. But when it works, you're talking about 2, maybe even 3 yards.
Each year they added another step to the belly. Right, left, straight.
It was lead, cross, roll. Lead, cross, roll.
We didn't run belly enough, I don't think.
And I remember Eric Carlson, he was perfect at it, kicking the ball out of bounds every single time. One time when it was a Kingman game, it was an away game, they got the ball on our 5-yard line because we kicked it out of bounds 13 times.
Anderson's football success never came before his love of teaching. An English teacher, he never let his players lose sight of their priorities.
Dad used to tell John and I, he'd say, guys, football's great, but English, that's what makes you a man.
He's probably spent 2 or 3 hours a day on lesson plans, and so I remember several times at 4, 4:15, 4:30, he'd tell the team, you know, guys, if you want to go on, but I need to get home and do lesson plans.
As time went on, Coach had more and more difficulty defining the line between work and home life. During one 7-year stretch, he endured more failed marriages than losing seasons. He also had trouble relating to his sons. Anderson's son, John, later admitted to storing an unhealthy amount of aggression he later took out on the football field.
Like, for instance, we'd play catch, but always on third down and long, instead of letting me pass, he'd always make me quick kick. He'd say, Bubs, nobody expects it on 3rd down.
It was also during this span in the late 80s and early 90s that many began to question whether or not Anderson was losing his grip on reality.
I can tell you that he's absolutely crazy. I can just think of many times that I've talked with Coach Kirkhart and Coach Alley, Coach Schwartz, Coach Bacon, and we've all discussed how we thought that he'd lost it.
And he gave me that look. You know that look. Everybody knows that look.
Crazy might be a little harsh.
Crazy, yeah, it's a pretty loose term to use for Coach Anderson. Psychotic, lunatic, ludicrous.
He was a tyrant, he was a dictator, a demagogue, all on the football field.
Maybe he took a little pleasure in watching people in pain.
Many of his players admitted to being afraid of practice, but more afraid of visiting their crazed coach in the office.
The reason we're doing this interview from the right side of my face is because the left side, I still have a bruise from getting beat around by Coach Anderson in his office one day.
If you can say anything about Coach Anderson, you can say he's got a big heart, and that he's not very, he never used any kind of fear tactic at all when it came to dealing with players.
Well, you know, when I started playing, I had 10 fingers, but somewhere in there, Coach, you know, ripped them off.
Coach also slowly lost his attention to detail, particularly off the field.
We were in a van on the way to football camp in Vail. We pull off the interstate into a convenience store, and there's only 6 of us in the van.
We get back into the van after getting a bite to eat at the gas station.
Coach was, for some reason, I guess, was in a real hurry to get up there. You know, he's one of those time schedule type of guys, so he probably had it on one of his cards that he always carried with him.
It's only 2 of us. Ed and I are sitting in the back looking at each other.
What's wrong with this pitcher? picture Rich, we still have, like, you know, our entire backfield is still back at the gas station. We got to go pick them up.
6 people started in the van, only 3 of us were pulling off, and Coach was getting ready to get on the interstate.
Anyways, it took him about 30 miles or so before he decided to turn around and come back and get him.
He has no idea that half the van is empty. Yet 2 days later in practice, we're on a belly. Crable's playing tackle, moves his foot half an inch further than he's supposed to, and Coach is all over it. At the same time, he's yelling at Eastus for something he did wrong on the other side.
Amidst the chaos in his own mind, Anderson slowly began building his teams back to prominence, with an influx of talented players that included Kobe Tresner, Adam Wilkie, Tyler Teasing, Todd Bone, and Marty Grusness. The Greenbacks made the playoffs for the first time in 6 years when they won their district in 1994. The 94 team gave Anderson his first undefeated regular season and set up one of the biggest matchups in school history when the Greenbacks traveled west to face Scott City. Despite a lopsided loss to the Beavers, heavy anticipation built for the 1995 season. The season started with a bang. Pratt began piling wins as the Greenback offense mastered Anderson's complex system. Anderson also showed a new, softer side in dealing with players.
Nick Crable, we were playing at Great Bend one year, I remember. It was incredible. Nick completely blew his assignment, and Coach stopped the whole play, stopped everything, and said, "Come here for a minute." And he said, "Fellas, Nick's having a bad game, and if there's any way we could just start this over for Nick, because I'm sorry that he's just not getting out the way he needs to. Obviously, he's got some personal problems. Nick, if you want to come to my office after the game, I'd be more than happy to talk to you." And I just continually was amazed at how Coach Anderson could do that year in and year out. He had such a soft touch with people in that sense.
The new Anderson seemed to be working, and the town of Pratt became engulfed in Greenback mania. The Greenbacks marched through the regular season unbeaten and moved on to the playoffs for the 2nd straight year. They came from behind to win 3 games in a row, setting up a state championship with Hiawatha, matching 2 teams with identical 12-0 records. Pratt beat the Redskins 13-6, giving the town its first ever football title, and most importantly, a sign outside of town. With his dream of a sign in place, Anderson began to show signs of changing.
His attention draws to something, and it's our middle linebacker, Schwartz, is just standing there staring off into nowhere. And he's like, "Schwartz, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Coach, you got to look at this sunset, man. It's beautiful." And Coach is like, "What sun?" Oh my God, that is beautiful. And he just stops. He stops practice. He's like, "Stop, halt. Everybody, you got to look at the sunset." And so for like 5 minutes of this very intense practice, we just stopped, look at the colors of the sky. And from there, we knew Coach was on a downhill towards softness.
Practices shortened, Anderson's tirades became less frequent, and players were encouraged to talk about their feelings.
Now it's strange. He keeps talking about feelings and hugs, giving out stickers for good deeds. It's strange.
Probably the biggest thing I remember about Coach Anderson was how subtle he was about just minute things like laying down on the field, for example. I remember he pulled me aside after one practice, said, "Now, Shane, I saw you got hurt. You had a hip pointer there in practice today, and you got right up." I said, "Well, Coach, Albert's told me, you know, if we're ever hurt, just go ahead and get up, shake it off, don't worry about it." Coach pulled me aside that day and said, "Never mind what he said, just go ahead and lay down. If it hurts, just feel it. If you have to cry a little, that's fine. Just stay down, think about it, think about your parents, some stuff like that, and say a little prayer for yourself, and when it feels better, get back up."